In the early morning of April 15th, 1912, 21-year-old Richard Dick Norris William II was washed off the deck of the doomed RMS Titanic and into the icy water of the North Atlantic. Rescued by lifeboat, but almost up to his waist in near-frozen water for several hours, William suffered such extreme frostbite that medical personnel wanted to immediately amputate his legs. Instead, Williams decided he liked his legs where they were, and he went on to make rather good use of the appendages. Born on January 29th, 1891 in Geneva, Switzerland to American parents, in fact his father, Charles Duane Williams, was a descendant of Benjamin Franklin, Williams had a privileged childhood, studying at an exclusive Swiss boarding school and later being admitted to Harvard. He was traveling with his father, an accomplished tennis player in his own right, and whose efforts in part led to the creation of the International Tennis Federation, when they boarded the Titanic as first-class passengers in Cherbourg, France, in order to sail to America to participate in a tennis tournament. The year before, Williams had actually won the Swiss championship. After the Titanic hit the iceberg on April 14th, but before anyone was too worried about it, Williams was passing a stateroom where a steward was unable to open the door to free the panicked passenger inside. Williams broke down the door and freed the passenger, but ignorant of the impending tragedy, the hapless steward was more concerned with property damage, to the point that he threatened to report Williams to the White Star Line. After this, to pass the time while the ship was sinking and in order to keep warm, father and son, they headed for the gym. Ultimately, Williams did leave the ship, however. Some accounts provide that just before this, Williams witnessed his father's death, and that the older Williams was crushed along with several others by a collapsing forward funnel. However, there does not appear to be any direct quote from Williams himself that has survived to this day describing that aspect of the story. The only thing we know for sure is that he has very clearly stated that his father was not with him after he was thrown from the ship. Whatever the case, once in the icy water, Williams later recounted, "After we hit the water, the Titanic rebounded and I was hurled through the air and clear away from the boat beyond the suction zone. I was not underwater very long, and as soon as I came to the top, I threw off the big fur coat. I also threw off my shoes. About 20 yards away, I saw something floating, so I swam to it and found it to be a collapsible boat, collapsible A. I hung on to it, and after a while got aboard and stood up in the middle of it. The water was up to my waist. About 30 of us clung to it. When Officer Lowe's boat, Lifeboat 14, picked us up, 11 of us were still alive. All the rest were dead from cold." Later, Williams found himself on board the RMS Carpathia, the Cunard Line steamship that responded to the Titanic's distress signal and ultimately saved approximately 700 lives. Interestingly, there was actually another large ship that was actually within visual range of the Titanic when it was going down, but because their radio operator had gone to sleep for the night and the captain decided to ignore the Titanic's emergency flares, that ship didn't do anything to help. Alright, so let's get back to Williams. The problem for him was that beyond having to endure the frigid night sopping wet from his little dunk in the ocean, as he mentioned, his legs were submerged in the water in the lifeboat. The result was that when the Carpathia's doctor saw his leg, he strongly recommended that they be amputated. Refusing to let his burgeoning tennis career be cut short, however, Williams declined the offer despite the potential risk to his life. Instead, he simply did his best to get the blood flowing again, hobbling around as best he could until he needed rest and then sleep. Even then, he'd religiously wake up every 2 hours to walk around in the hope that the added blood flow would allow his legs to heal. Ultimately, as the strength in his legs returned, he continued to ramp up his physical activities every day until everything was back to normal. His efforts paid off. Within a year, Williams became the intercollegiate tennis champion in singles, playing for Harvard, and then went on to win it again in 1915. He also won for doubles in 1914 and 1915. Williams' most famous tennis wins include singles titles in the US Championships in 1914 and 16, Olympic gold medalist in 1924 with Hazel Hotchkiss-Whiteman in mixed doubles, and he was a member of the champion Davis Cup teams in 1925 and 1926. But tennis was not the only place that he put his legs to good use. Williams served in the US Army in World War I and was granted awards from France for valor, including the prestigious Croix de Guerre and the Legion of Honor. He was ultimately inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame in 1957, and he died on June 2nd, 1968, in Pennsylvania, at the age of 77. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up below, and don't forget to subscribe. We've got brand new videos like this, well, sometimes. They're not really quite on a schedule yet, so hit that notification bell so you do find out when we put these out. Leave us a comment, let us know how we're doing. This is a relatively new channel, so it'd be good to hear from you. And as always, thank you for watching.